Welcome to the second volume of the Endgame Academy. This time I want to deal with theoretical rook endings. The most important theoretical endings because they happen so often and they show certain principles of the royal game, that activity is important and that rook endings have a very large drawish tendency. I start with rook against pawn, as it's important to understand these positions well, as they arise often. And they also have certain drawish tendency, even here, if the pawn is far advanced enough and supported by the king. The main motive is a body check of the defending king, but of course also the knight promotion, the cut off of the king, rook checks and other important motives. Please study that chapter well and also use the interactive tests. Take the interactive tests, as the interactivity is a new feature of this new Academy series. Then come the endgames with rook and pawn against rook, or rook and two pawns against rook, or rook and pawn against rook and pawn, and one chapter with real rook endings where this knowledge plays a large role in the sixth and final chapter of the DVD. Yeah, with rook and pawn against rook and pawn, you should of course know Philidor's famous drawing position, Lucena's win, also called win by building a bridge. You should know Karsted's draw. You should know Tarash's draw and the defense on the 8th rank. And this is all not magic or rocket science. It is much less than several of your opening files, I strongly guess. But this endgame knowledge doesn't get older and is also valid in chess 960, also called freestyle chess. Another advantage of endgame knowledge. And yeah, please also do all the interactivity, because you can also only master it when you do it yourself. Watching videos is nice, but insufficient for real mastery. And you should of course also know Vancouver's famous position, famous draw. Here I want to show to show the advantage of knowledge. Not knowing it, black most likely loses this kind of position, as white is very far advanced. But here it's a draw. The king must be on g7 or h7, and black's rook must tie white's down, and this is a clear draw. The king has no shelter on the queen's side from the rain of rook checks, very typical defensive technique. Here it's no hiding place. And here important is rook f5 check, not this. And white's rook will break free and white will win. Instead, check and the Vancouver move rook f6, and it's a draw. Here it's losing. Black cannot go into the Vancouver setup, and then white is quick enough to win. This is the only drawing defense, setting up the typical Vancouver draw, and this was also worked with additional white's pawns on h2, h3, h4, and h5. Rook endings really have a very, very large draw-see. And please do me a favor and also do the interactive tests. They are the new feature of the new Academy series, and I think they are very, very important, because watching videos is nice but insufficient for real mastery. And now I wish you a lot of fun.